ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download.
DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, it's the Midday Market Report with Jeff Dawson.
Good morning, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time of the week for the Midday Market Report. Good friend and colleague, Mr. Nick Hathcoat, as the last college football game to break down of the season. Our last show with Nick, maybe for a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, as they are deep into college baseball. Right around the corner, we talked about 28 days to the first pitch and that season starts. So we're going to have Nick and Matt back, of course, for year number 4 for the NCAA Insiders College Baseball. But today, we wrap up a season of college football. Headliner today, Who's Your Daddy? Or Hurricane Alert, NCAAF championship game, Hard Rock, I like to say Cafe, Hard Rock Stadium in Miami on Monday. Currently, the Hoosiers, 8.5 across the board, other than the South Point. Chris Andrews, good morning. Laying the 9. He's looking for some Hurricane money, and they keep pumping in the Hoosiers. But first and foremost, a shout out to our proud sponsors and partnerships. It's WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play, download the app. It is free. Travis, Zach, Guy, myself, Amber Hawley, Carol Bucks, Matt, Drew, Jacob. The list is endless. Come on board. Head on over to X at WagerWire. Follow them. Join the best community on the platform. And, of course, AtlantaSteaksAndSeafood.com. Steak, seafood, chops, appetizers, wine. Terry does it all. Head on over to AtlantaSteaksAndSeafood.com. So, without further ado, in a brisk, cold 20-plus degrees in Tennessee, Mr. Nick Hathcoat. What's up, Nick?
Morning, Jeff.
'Tis the season. I remember in August, September, we're doing our shows. We're talking about, let me see, let's go back there. Texas, Penn State, Clemson, and here we are, Indiana, Miami, a Hurricane team that started the year that if you just use the eye test, you're like, this is one of the best teams in the country, hands down. A couple stumbling blocks. Were they in? Are they getting in? They got in, and they've taken care of business. And this Hoosier team, the comparison, and I think it's a fair comparison, that LSU Joe Burrow team, the dominance, the comparisons there. But welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I mean, we got one more college football game, and then it is officially college baseball season for us here at NCAA Insiders. And obviously, that's what we're known for. That's kind of where we make our name at. So it is super exciting. But yeah, we got one more college football game to talk about. I'm excited for it. I think it's a great matchup of styles. So it's going to be a fun one. It's definitely something. Yeah, you mentioned the beginning of the season. Obviously, Indiana was going to be good again. I had their team win total over. That obviously hit by a mile. Didn't know what to think of Miami. Obviously, with Carson Beck coming in, they were going to rely on a lot of freshmen. And it like you said at the beginning, it was like, oh my gosh, all the metrics, especially the metrics, loved this team the first 6, 7 weeks. And then Louisville happens and SMU happens. And it's like, wait a second, I don't know what this is. And now it's kind of like they're playing at their peak, which is good to see. I mean, you don't get through Ole Miss and you don't get through Ohio State if you're not playing well. So it should be a good matchup. And yeah, excited to talk about it for sure.
You know, I just wrapped up a show with Scotty Webb, and last week when we were breaking down the NFL, the Eagles and the 49ers, the line opened up at 3.5 and it got pushed to 6. And Friday and Saturday, I came on the show and I said, this line is out of control. That's the words that I used. I was like, listen, I'm not saying the Eagles don't win by a touchdown or more. This 6 is way out of control. Everyone looks at the weather, west to east, yada, yada, yada. And of course, the Niners end up winning the game outright. Before kickoff of the Hoosiers game last week or 10 days ago, whenever it was, there were 5.5-point favorites in the look-ahead line. At halftime, on the ass whooping that they were putting on to Alabama, they next thing you know, they moved it to 7.5. Well, by the time that game got over, they're like, "No, guys, we're gonna make sure we don't get crushed here by the Hoosiers." It's 8.5 now across the board. South Point 9, and I said this on the show, and I kind of got chastised by Scotty. I'm gonna say it to you. This line's out of control right now at 8.5/9.
Disagree completely. I mean, if you remember, like what my power ratings had when you asked me on the show last week, you said what would the look ahead line be if it's Indiana Miami? I told you 7.5. I thought the country would have begged for 5.5 to be posted anywhere, and that would have just exploded. I mean, obviously there would have been limits by the books, like you wouldn't have seen any of those huge bets, obviously 10 days before the game starts. But yeah, that would have just been hammered. Books knew it. 7.5, 8.5 is more correct. I know 9 at South Point. I was a little surprised to see that, just because and it's stuck there because that happened yesterday afternoon is when it went to 9, and it's actually stuck at 9, which means they're not getting as much play on Miami as maybe they thought they would when they posted that 9. And when you look at it, I don't think it's disrespectful or that wrong. Miami was just a 9.5 point underdog to Ohio State. Indiana is better than Ohio State. So I can see the argument where it's like, oh my, this is a national championship game. It shouldn't be more than a touchdown. But also, like if you compare it to, especially power rating wise, and you compare it to what Ohio State, like the spread for Ohio State, and I know they lost to Miami, so maybe you can obviously make the argument they shouldn't have been a 9.5-point favorite. Okay, I'll hear that out. But it's still, if you look at it, 9.5 for Ohio State, and then you give them 8.5 for Indiana, with Indiana being the better team, with how Indiana is playing right now, with what they did to Bama, what they did to Oregon, and they're still getting, even at 8.5, they're still getting all the public money. They're still getting all of the larger bets are still going to Indiana. So it's like that kind of tells you something. Cignetti hasn't taken his foot off the pedal in any game all season long. Why would he do it in the national championship? So this is one where it's like, I think Miami's going to have to fight back, and that's not great for them. That's not their best position. They need to be ahead and be able to use that ground game, play kind of slow. So, yeah, I think the line is about right. I haven't touched the line yet, as we'll get to. I was hoping it might get bought down. I don't know, I don't know if you'd be surprised if it gets bought down a little bit. We definitely don't see a 7. There's absolutely no shot we see a 7 anywhere by game time, but I could see it getting down to back to that 7.5, 8 point again. But yeah, I would say it's about right. At least that's where I had it coming into the game.
I got tongue-tied when I said ass whooping Alabama. I meant to say
well, they
Ducks,
did that
of
too.
course. Yes, they did. And the funny thing is, we had the Ducks pre-flop when the tournament started, plus 650, and I had sent out the alert. Anyone want to go grab 2 or 3 units on Indiana plus 120 to beat the Hurricanes, which that number doesn't exist anymore,
Yeah.
of course. So we could be sitting with 2 or 3 units on Indiana plus the 120 on the money line. Go back to the Miami Ohio State game because you brought up something good. That was 9.5 for most of the week, And in the afternoon before the kickoff, that dropped to 7.5, and then the
Mm.
alarm bell started going. Will we see that there? And I brought up this past history long before you were born. I've witnessed Miami in dog situations at the Orange Bowl against my Nebraska teams. I've seen what can happen in Miami in January in a championship game. 7 point underdogs. They were 13.5 point underdogs to Nebraska, and Irvin Fryer drops the winning touchdown. Then and they beat that. The Schellenbach teams beat us. I go back to the Jimmy Johnson era. Now you got a game at Hard Rock Stadium, 20 minutes from campus. And again, Indiana, Signetti, Mendoza, and he does not take his foot off the gas. How did Miami beat Ohio State? Well, they got out ahead. They took their best blows. Ohio State scored. Ohio State was driving. Pick six, game over. So the only way Miami can win this game, in my eyes, and I'm not here announcing to the world I'm on the Canes because I'm not. My point is, they got to play from ahead, Nick.
Yeah, 1,000%. I know Beck played extremely well against Ole Miss. This IU defense is not the Ole Miss defense. It's just really not. If they have to drop back and pass it 40 times, that's a losing formula for Miami. There's a lot of talk about the defensive line for Miami, and like that's who carries them. This defensive line is so good. Guess who has a better pressure rate in the country? Guess who has a better sack rate in the country? Indiana does. So Indiana's defensive line is better statistically than Miami's is. Miami's obviously has the big names. Reuben Bain is probably going to be the second overall pick in the draft now that Dante Moore said he's staying in Oregon. He's obviously there. He can create pressure on his own, just wreak havoc. But yeah, the Indiana defensive line, even with a couple injuries, is just as good. We saw what they did to Dante Moore, who hasn't been pressured a lot this season, and he looked like what was it a few years ago, or seeing ghosts, whereas Carson Wentz, that's what he looked like back there, and he was just worried the whole game. And then you look at the defensive backfield for Indiana, they're a little undersized because they're not these aren't these big pro prospects that are like every NFL team's wanting, like in Ohio State or like in Alabama. But D'Angelo Pons is going to play in the NFL. He's only 5'10", and that's where you can see him kind of get beat every once in a while, even though he is a baller. Miami doesn't have those like big receivers. They really don't. You look at it, they have kind of like the small, quick guys. They rely on the screen. Carson Beck's average depth of target is 7.2 yards on the entire season. He throws so many screen passes. Indiana can tackle. That is one thing they absolutely can do, is they can tackle. Ole Miss could not, so those screens worked. But yes, you mentioned it. Miami has to play in front. They have to be able to create short third downs. They have to be able to run the ball 3-4 yards on every first down, every second down, then kind of get those short pass plays where Indiana doesn't know if you're going to throw a screen or doesn't know if you're going to run it up the middle, and rely on Fletcher a ton. Let him be a workhorse. He needs to run the ball probably. The way they win it is if he runs the ball 20 to 25 times, because that means they are either ahead or close, and that means the ground game is working. Yeah, I don't know if that happens, because also this Indiana offense is just rolling right now and looks unstoppable. The fact that Mendoza still has more touchdown passes than incompletions in the playoffs is just an absurd stat. I know he hasn't thrown the ball a ton because he hasn't had to, but they complete everything. Elijah Surratt came out of nowhere. He was St. Joseph's PA, a walk-on up there, and now look at him. He's one of the best receivers in the NCAA. Transferred to James Madison, then followed obviously to Indiana. Omar Cooper Jr. was not talked about. He's a little 5'11" kind of scat wide receiver that's working. And then obviously, what's his name from Nashville, Tennessee, is turned into just a deep threat that Indiana didn't really have. And so this Charlie Becker, that's what it was. Yeah. And this is just one of those teams I think I don't know if I wouldn't even say destiny because of how good they're playing. Like a lot of people are saying, this is just a team of destiny. Team of destiny is one of those that just kind of, I would say that's more Miami, where it's like they snuck in. They're winning games at the very end. They're creating whether it's overtime, whether it's this kind of touchdown with a minute left. Indiana's just steamrolling. That doesn't seem like a team of destiny. That just seems like a great team. So yeah, I think Indiana wins this. like I said, I haven't touched the spread yet because like I don't. So I guess what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to eventually get a full unit on it. By all these books are going to offer profit boosts, every single one of them. So you can, I would like probably what I will do is just I'll like move that down to 6.5 and just use a profit boost on like whether like on every book until I get up to like my unit size. And I'll probably end up doing it that way where I'll end up having like 4 or 5 bets on Indiana at 6.5.
I'm going to ask you this, and we know obviously Mendoza's going to the NFL, and we obviously know there's TJ Canes all day. TJ, welcome back. Long time no see. You are missed. Hopefully, you and the family are doing great as well. Mendoza, number one pick, going to the Raiders. They're on the clock as we speak. I talked about, geez, give Signetti a contract here. Just let him write whatever, and head on over with TB12 and come on in the NFL. It's not going to happen. You get an extension. He's going to be making 11 and a half, 12 and a half, whatever he's making per. We saw the writing on the wall 2 years ago with Indiana. Now they hit the big stage. They heard the talk of Ohio State, and as you said, they're steamrolling. They're not the team of destiny. They're the story, like LSU and Joe. They were the story. Is this sustainable for Indiana moving forward? Because what he has done to a basketball college forever, university. Now they're a football program and 60 minutes away from winning a national title. Is this sustainable? In other words, so I want to go play in the Big Ten. Well, it's Ohio State, it's Michigan, it's Penn State, it's the Oregons of the world or whatever. No one's running, or are people starting to say, hey, you know what? I'm going with Coach Signetti.
They are now. Even like you just look at the portal recruiting class. I think Indiana's like 4th right now. At least the last I saw on the website I use. Bringing in Josh Hoover, so he's up and down at TCU. Yes, I get that, but so was Mendoza. And then you look at once Signetti gets a hold of him, once this offensive staff gets a hold of this quarterback, it's like what they transferred him into says a lot. And Hoover, I would argue, you could argue Hoover is more naturally talented than Mendoza was, especially coming out of high school, especially how the first couple of years went in college. There's a reason Mendoza didn't even get an offer from Miami, and he grew up 20 minutes from Hard Rock. So I think getting Josh Hoover, they're getting a bunch of defensive linemen in the portal that they want. And now, out of everything, they've never been really invested in football because they haven't had to. I know, like I heard it. I can't remember. I think it was. I think Wes Reynolds said it on VSiN yesterday, where he was talking about when Signetti was doing his interview with the AD. He said, "Give me like just an average amount of NIL money, and I can turn this program into a winner." And obviously, he has done that. And now you have Mark Cuban coming in, Mark Cuban is obviously the biggest name but he pays all his money to Indiana, goes to the Indiana School of Business, which is like known as like the biggest business school in the country. It has like the largest alumni base is the Indiana School of Business. And now he said for the first time, he's going to start putting money into athletics. That's kind of a scary thought, and tells me they're not going anywhere, because if you're Curt Signetti and all you have to do is say like, hey, Mark, I need like $3 million for this very important piece. What's Mark Cuban going to just pull that cash from under his mattress? Like, yeah, that's just chunk change. So I think that will be perfectly fine. I don't see them going anywhere, especially in the Big Ten. Like, and you see success in how much it means. Like I think it was their assistant AD came from Georgia. So she knows how important it is, like how much football success can lead to, whether it's more enrollees in the school, like small things like that, how much it can help other sports. Just because of how much money you make. So I don't think they're going anywhere. The recruiting seems good. They are a fun team. Seems like a fun team to play for, even though Signetti has his moments on the sideline where it's like, who would want to play for this Artie, like this Grinch? But it works. And yeah, I would say they really, at least they're not going anywhere anytime soon. I know Signetti's, I believe, 63 years old. So I guess the case is how long does he want to coach? How long does he stay? Something like that. But yeah, this is very sustainable. And now that they have the money and the resources, basketball team still isn't great. Baseball team this year is going to be down. So it's like, yeah, we have a winning program. Why not just put money into it, knowing now how much it's worth?
DJ wants to ask you, will JMU continue to be a feeder program?
Yes. So, and it's not just JMU, and I know JMU has the resources and the money, for sure. Like more than like them, you could look at some of them, like them, Liberty especially. There are certain kind of G5 teams that have money to get the above average recruits that a lot of like the smaller G5 teams can't pay for. They get them, but then the money doesn't last. Like you look at, especially now, I think they're losing 9 of their 11 starters on offense, and 7 are going to the transfer portal because of the success they saw this year. It really is, and and the money has changed, and that's where it's like the beauty of college football, where it's like some P4 teams some G5 teams can make a difference, is kind of going out the wayside. And we saw that again, like we saw that JMU Oregon game, we saw that in the Tulane Ole Miss game, because it's turning more into like a minor league feeder system from these like G5 teams to the Power 4 teams, where it's like money talks, and it's always going to talk, and not just money, but like TV exposure, brand exposure. I have a better chance of getting to the NFL if I'm playing with Alabama than I am playing at James Madison. It's just, so it is one of those things. That's where the NIL and the transfer portal hurts. It hurts the G5 more than it hurts the sport overall when you're talking about the playoffs, because the playoffs are just the main, obviously the top 12 teams in the country right now. And that's where down the line, we're going to look and see how long this lasts, where there's an automatic bid for a G5 team, because it's just not sustainable. But yeah, it really is. It's kind of turned in that. And it's, like I said, it's not just JMU. It's all kind of the big G5 schools have turned into, like, think of it as minor league baseball, where it just becomes, here, we're just going to scout these guys and bring them on next year. Especially looking at IU success. Like, you look at Indiana success and everybody's saying, oh, they're cheating. That's one thing. It's like, okay, get out of here. But everybody's like, oh, well, they're only winning because of how old they are. Is that a bad thing? Like, yes, that's a great thing to do. So you're going to get these programs that are going to look at Indiana success and say, okay, yeah, maybe I realize that 22 and 23-year-olds are more physically developed than these 18 and 19-year-olds, and they can win ball games. So it's like, if you have somebody at JMU or Tulane or somewhere that's been there for 3 years, then they have success. It's like, yes, I'm going to bring that guy on. He might not be an NFL talent, but he's played 3 years. He's more physically mature than a 19, 20-year-old. So it's going to work that way. And yes, unfortunately, G5, I think, is just going to turn into feeder schools no matter where you're at.
I'm going to ask you this. I think in August was one thing when we were breaking down the SEC. Texas was on top. We're looking for a Georgia bounce back. DeBoer year 3 in Alabama. We knew about Ole Miss. We knew about a lot of these teams. But as the season progressed, and we saw the success of the Big Ten, I guess where I'm going with this, Nick, is the championship game is Big Ten versus ACC. Now the ACC, Clemson was a preseason Final Four team. They had Cade Klubnik. They were going to be there. Well, it ended up, of course, being Miami. Moving forward, it almost looks, the writing's on the wall with NIL, with the transfer portal, that the big bad SEC, everyone's now in equal footing, equal levels right now. Moving forward, now, again, I don't have any of the rosters. I don't know who's coming, who's going, whatever. Is the SEC now being put on watch, like next year, when we get the preseason, who to expect, players to watch? Is it more even? I mean, because the Big Ten was probably, when you look at, I know the SEC was longer and stronger, but the cream at the top, the Big Ten was the better conference this year.
Yeah, it's basically personal judgment on how you judge which conference is better. I think you hit it on the head, where the Big Ten at the top was definitely stronger. Like, the actual top of the Big Ten was stronger, but then you look at the bottom of the Big Ten, and it's just like, okay, well, there's some free wins every week almost for a lot of teams. SEC is definitely not quite as much as the top. Obviously, there's your Georgia, Alabama, who are kind of down this year compared to normal. Texas was obviously down compared to normal. Tennessee was down compared to normal. But it is deeper, where it's like you look at teams like Vandy, Missouri, even Florida. You could beat teams any week, and that's where it's basically personal judgment on how you judge it. Is the better conference the deeper one that can go like 12 deep, where it's like there's 12 good teams in the SEC that can win any given Saturday, or do you consider it the better conference, the one that is top heavy, that is most likely going to win their third championship in a row? So it's just kind of personal preference on how you like to, I guess, consider which one's better, top heavy or length.
28 days till the start of college baseball. I know you're smiling from ear to ear. A lot of work behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I tweeted earlier this week, UConn stores had their first practice. Give us where you are, what you're seeing with all your work as you get closer to opening day.
Yeah, went over the UConn one, got that done this week. I know we talked last week. I hadn't done the deep dive. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what Penders does. I know it was funny. There's a report like at the beginning of fall. I guess he took all his guys out to the field, and on the big board, he played the NCAA selection committee show, like the NCAA selection show, for the entire team, of them being one of the first 4 teams out. And that has actually surprisingly happened to him it's his third time in his career that's happened to him where he's been a first 4 out, which is kind of shocking. They thought they should have made it, especially we mentioned this in kind of our pre-show. They finished 25-4 and on a 13-game win streak. You think that kind of gets you in. Didn't end up winning the Big East tournament. Like, they were the hot team going in. Creighton pulled it out, and then Creighton ended up winning a game down in the Arkansas Regional as well. So they were still pretty good. This is still a top heavy league, which is Connecticut's problem. It's still pretty much it's Creighton, it's UConn, and it's Xavier. And outside of that, it's a little bit down. So their RPI is going to hang a lot on their schedule. Like you mentioned it before, they cannot go 2-13 to start the season this year. They need to, yes, their schedule was amazing last year, but you still have to win some of those games. Like, even if you just squeak out, it looks so much better if you're 5-10 as opposed to 2-13 or something like that. However, they return under 30% of their at-bats from last year. They do return almost 2/3 of their innings pitched, so they won't be bad, but there's going to be a lot of mixing and matching. There's going to be, especially at the beginning of the season, which is the scary part because their schedule, there's going to be a lot of question marks of who fits where, who goes where, just without that much returning depth. So that's going to be tough. I'll say a team I'm excited about. It still feels like they're not getting a ton of love. I think they're preseason ranked 5th when it came out this week, and that's Georgia Tech. And I'm so excited about Georgia Tech in the ACC. They have basically built their roster like an SEC team. This offense is going to bang, and everybody's like concerned about the pitching staff, and I don't think they should be. I think they get a bad rap because of how good their offense is. They get a bad rap of, oh, well, look how many runs they give up. And part of that is because they're ahead late in games. So like they're throwing bullpen pieces that don't make a ton of difference. They still finished fourth in the ACC in ERA last year, which kind of gets overlooked. They won the ACC last year, which a lot of people don't realize. That was over ACC. I mean, that was over Louisville, who made it to Omaha. That was over Clemson. That was over NC State. That was over UNC, who a lot of people had as a top 5 team in the country, over Miami. So there's definitely a lot to be excited about. They also return 8 of 9 starters on a team that won the ACC last year. And the one starter they didn't bring back, they brought in Jared Advincula, who is from Cal, who's a second baseman, and he's a top 3 player in the portal. And he's going to be a first-round draft pick this year. So that's who they brought in. They have a top 5 player in the country in Drew Burris in center field. If you haven't watched him, he's a freaking lightning bug in center field, but he hits 30 home runs. It doesn't make any sense. He's like 5'8", but can hit he might hit 25, 30 home runs this year. So super excited about this team for sure. And I guess those are kind of 2 teams to touch on. Wanted to touch on UConn for you for a bit. And then, we haven't talked Georgia Tech on here. So that's a good one. I will say about the rankings, just kind of to quickly go over with them. I had UCLA as number 1 as well. It's just one of those things. They are loaded, absolutely loaded. And it helps that they're in the West Coast, and it helps that they're in the Big Ten. They're going to roll through the Big Ten. Is just it's not a baseball conference. All their money's that's the difference between the Big Ten and SEC. Like you talk about football, they're kind of even in where the money is spent, like football wise. Like SEC obviously spends a bunch on football, and so does the Big Ten. SEC spends a ton on baseball. The Big Ten, most of them do not care, and they just don't. So it's always going to be like that. So UCLA is going to steamroll through the Big Ten, which means they'll have a national seed. They'll be hosting. I think they're the best team in the country. The number one player in the country in Rock Chalowski at shortstop. He's going to be the number one overall pick. I think that's a done deal. Unless he gets hurt or something, he can have almost as bad a year as possible, and he will still be the number one pick. He's just that good, that athletic, and that great. I would say some gripes I have. Mississippi State being 4, that's a team that needs to prove it to me. Let me see it first. You're bringing in a new coach, Brian O'Connor from Virginia. Great. He's obviously has a proven track record, no doubt about that. But there's 23 newcomers on this team, and that's a lot when it comes to college baseball. You have a 35-man ball now. It's basically rosters unlimited, but you pretty much have 31 to 32 guys who actually travel with the team. And you're saying basically 75, 80% of those are newcomers. Great transfers. Yes, they are. Like they were big name transfers. Ace Reese at third base is great. But the pitching staff has a lot of questions. And in the SEC, the pitching staff is not what you want to have questions because some offenses will just absolutely tear you apart if that's not taken care of. So could they be 4th by the end of the year? Absolutely. But would I like to see them prove it to me first? I think they should be more around that 9 to 12 range to start. And kind of that's where I see it. There's a lot of gripe about, I would say, Coastal Carolina being 6th. Everybody's just like, okay, well, this is being banked off the back of last year. And only because they got to the national championship game, that D1 baseball wants to reward them and put them 6th. I don't think so. This offense is going to be better than it was last year, which is a scary thought. The offense wasn't tremendous last year. They relied more on the pitching staff, which is pretty unusual for Coastal. So Coastal is usually a very offensive team. Like, let's hit a ton of home runs. They only had 2 guys with double-digit home runs last year, which is very surprising. This year they should have about 5 or 6 guys that hit double digits, and they bring back the Sunbelt Pitcher of the Year to throw on Fridays. He's going to dominate once again. They bring back the best bullpen based on ERA wise in the country last year. They bring back the top 3 pieces of that with 2 closers that are just dominant and will be pitching in the big leagues someday. So Coastal, I don't know if they should be 6th, but I do agree they should be up there. People are talking about, they should be like 15 to 25. I don't agree with that. I am actually pretty set. I like a lot of what D1 baseball did, and that's very unusual for me. I think their rankings are usually pretty off, at least to where I would have them. A lot of kind of clickbaity type of stuff, but I would say this preseason poll is actually pretty accurate to what I would have had it going into the year.
Last question for you. Which team, high expectations last year that faltered, looking that might bounce back with a chip on their shoulder, maybe flying a little under the radar?
I would actually say Texas A&M. And obviously
it's so funny because that's exactly where I was.
Yeah, that was obviously the big story of last year. Your number 1 overall team, they just came off a national championship against Tennessee. Obviously, they lost that, but you're still a national championship game. You bring back almost everyone. Your preseason ranked 1st. Obviously, don't even make the tournament, which Virginia didn't either. So the team ranked number 1 and the team ranked number 2, which was Virginia in the preseason rankings. Neither team even made the tournament, which has never happened before. But A&M, you could look, there was just so many things that went wild with them last year, where like just between injuries, your 2 best players got hurt. Jace Lavalette just wasn't the same player. Once kind of Grahovic, he didn't have any protection around him. Gavin Grahovic, who was basically the national freshman of the year, his freshman year, like the year they went to the College World Series, he gets hurt 12 games into the year. He misses the rest of it. He's back. Caden Sorrell missed 80% of the games, who's their right fielder, who's probably going to be a second round draft pick. He's completely back now. They lost their whole rotation last year, like coming off of last year, but now they bring back guys that have been hurt as well. Shane Sadeo would have pitched in the College World Series, and that's kind of where people thought they couldn't beat Tennessee because they just didn't have the depth of pitching staff, because he was in their rotation and got hurt 2 games before that in the Super Regional, and now he's back. So I'm very high on. Okay, I'm not very high on this A&M team, especially in the SEC. It's like they could be the seventh or eighth best team. That means they're a top 25 team. And I would say that's about where they're at. Michael Early, year two, I think he's going to prove it. I think last year was more of a fluke, really, than anything. Like you look at, they were still close to making the tournament, even with as bad a year as they had. If they don't get swept by Missouri at home, Missouri went 3-27 in the SEC last year. All three wins were at A&M towards the end of the season. It made no sense. But then you look at A&M made the semifinals in the SEC tournament, so they showed fight. And I think that's one of those things where, as a team and as a program, showing fight at the end of the year and give you some momentum going like through the summer and going through fall ball can really help. So I would say, to answer your question, I would say A&M, and I would say A&M over Virginia. Virginia lost so much. I would say it's going to be another year where Virginia is down, at least based on what I think, compared to what A&M will be.
Well, we can't wait. We're going to let you go and do your thing as well as Matt. We're going to give you some time off. You know the platform and stage is here when you want to chirp some baseball before we get to about 28 days. We'll bring you in at least a week before so we can go over your preview guide, some futures to add to the portfolio before opening day. Scroll has been going the whole time. And Hathcoat 413 Insiders, FB, and of course NCAA Insiders. But as always, wrap up this segment, Nick. Tell them where they can find all you guys' work.
Yeah, you mentioned the deep dives today on the docket. I have FIU and UTRGV are the deep dives for the day that I'm going to try to get through. So we're getting down there. Obviously, all the Power 4 teams done, all the best, basically all the best G5 teams done. So yeah, we're kind of getting down there in the weeds a little bit. Hopefully these are probably going to be shorter, for sure. But yeah, you mentioned that's where all my work is headed for the most part right now. But yeah, obviously NCAA Insiders is our main baseball account. That's where everything goes. I'll be running that all year long like usual. And I believe we're going to try to start a show the week after next. Will be our first one. We've talked about doing like maybe an Omaha 8 like fantasy draft type of preview, so that way we get 32 previews in and things like that. So yeah, we're looking forward to the season. You mentioned it. I think we're at 28 days. February 13th is when it starts. I think the very first game is at 9 a.m. Eastern time, because it is a game in Puerto Rico. So we will be starting early on February 13th for sure. And yeah, I'm super excited about it.
Go follow him, Hathcoat 413. Of course, check out all their work at the NCAA Insiders. We can't wait as well. As he said earlier on the show, he likes the Hoosiers. He's hoping a little buyback in the Canes. Maybe.
Oh, one bet I do have. I guess we didn't even get there. First half under 24.5 is one I have played. Just because I think it's going to be Miami. We mentioned that they're going to want to come out and just run the ball, keep the ball to Indiana's hands. I think Indiana is going to be fairly the same way, feeling it out. Now, obviously, if D'Angelo Pons jumps an out route and takes it to the house 10 seconds into the game, yeah, then we can just chalk it up. I don't think that's how it goes again. So the one play I do have on this so far is the first half under 24.5.
First half under 24.5, Miami and Indiana on Monday. Everyone, a big shout out to TJ. Welcome back, TJ. Been a while since we caught up. Behave yourself. Hope all is well. And in your world, I know you'll be rooting hard for your Canes on Monday night. So from myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Investor, one and only Mr. Nick Hathcoat at Hathcoat 413. We wish everyone a blessed day. Enjoy yourselves. And if you're in Tennessee or Florida, stay warm.
Yeah.
And stay tuned. See you soon.